Yes?
Damn, man. I'm getting angry.
What do you want?
Open the door.
Who's there?
I love you. Oh, man, unlock the door.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Eye Catching Customs. On today's episode, I'm going to go through the whole process of how I made my own Scream 1996 KNB mask. But before we get started, I did want to let all of y'all know that anyone can do this, because this was the first mask that I had ever made a mold of. I've made masks in the past, but granted, they were just out of random pieces of latex and stuff of that sort. This was my first ever mask that I hand sculpted, casted, molded, all of that good stuff. This was the first one that I ever did, and if I can do it, y'all can do it. Now, it does take a little bit of, time, a little bit of love, a little bit of technique in a way to get it to where you want to get it, but once you get the hang of it, and once you watch a couple videos and take a few notes, it is going to be so simple that anyone can do it. So to start this off, I'm going to start talking about the first step in the process, which is the sculpting process. So therefore, whether you're making your own custom mask of whatever you want to make, or you're making something from one of your favorite movies, either way, it is going to take some time to get the base sculpt down. What I usually start with is I go ahead and get a piece of cardboard, something that's really thick, and a piece of paper taped onto that cardboard. I usually draw out my design, at least that's what I did with this mask, which you will see. I drew out my design kind of in a way. Now you will see I kind of veered a little bit from that design because I didn't really like the look of it, but granted, I did work on this sculpture off and on for like maybe 3 weeks. And every time I finished with it, I was like, that's the one. Until I went and looked at more screen grabs and stuff like that, and I realized that my sculpt was a little bit off, and I wanted it to be as close as possible. So like I said, if your sculpt isn't coming out how you want it to come out, just look at some stuff and you go from there. Sculpting is an adding and a subtracting kind of thing. Yes, it's hard to subtract from a sculpt if you've put a lot of detail into it, but at the end of the day, you would rather take this timely process to have something that you really want when it finally comes out to be a final mask. There was about 3 things on my sculpt that I had always had issues with over the 3-week time period, and it was always the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. If I got one thing looking good, it was always throwing one thing off, which is the reason why I say always take in mind that you're going to be adding and subtracting off your sculpt. Yes, it sucks to have to subtract off the sculpt, but I did it, and once I did that and added some more stuff, I realized that it came out exactly how I wanted. Now, mind you, when it does come to you sculpting, if you do plan on sculpting your own mask, it might not be absolutely screen accurate. You could work on it for months, and it might not be screen accurate, but as long as you're happy with it, that is all that matters in the end. Now, also, what I do recommend, and a lot of other artists recommend, if you are going to be smoothing out the clay on the mask, and there's not going to be a lot of, different details on the outside of the mask, I always recommend to use rubbing alcohol, because the rubbing alcohol will kind of mix in with the plasticine inside of the clay, and it will really help you smooth things out great. And once you get your sculpt exactly how you want it, the next step is going to be getting some of this. I know it's in the box. I haven't unboxed it yet. I'm about to. Don't worry. Now, this random bag is actually white hydrocal. This is specifically made for molding masks. It is a plaster base, and it works amazing. Just always take in mind that you need to know how much you're going to need. I got a 10-pound bag while I was molding this mask, and soon realized that I did not have enough. But it did make the mold of the mask, but it did not leave a flat surface on the bottom. So therefore, the only issue that I have is I have to stick things underneath the mold to make sure that it's level, just to make sure that the mask is going to be completely covered all the way around. And if y'all do plan on making your own mask, to make it a little bit easier on y'all, everything that I bought was either on Amazon or around my local town. The hydrocal 30 I did buy on Amazon, and I also bought the liquid latex on Amazon. Now when it came to the shroud and the eye mesh, I went to my nearest Hobby Lobby, found what I thought worked best for the mask, ended up getting that for the eye mesh and the shroud itself. Now, whenever it came to the paint, I was kind of, confused on that, because I did not want to have to mix up latex and paint. If you don't know, acrylic paint will not stick to a latex mask. It will crack, it will peel. Later down the road, it will look like crap. So, before I started making this video, I wanted to kind of seek out to see if anybody else had made custom videos on making their own KNB mask. And thanks to CB Studios, he had shown a great representation on how to do this. And I will admit, in certain ways, I copied him. So if y'all want to go check out his video, he did some great work, did a great job, and he does a lot of great videos. So the CB Studios, thank you so much for the help on this one. But what he had came up with was Plastidip for the white and the black of the mask. I tried it, it worked great. And I got that at my nearest Lowe's. You can also get it at your nearest Walmart. Anywhere that sells spray paint, I'm sure will have Plastidip. And this is the liquid latex that I decided to go with. It is the Monster Maker's Latex. It is a 1 gallon bucket. Now mind you, this 1 gallon bucket is going to go a long way if you're doing a Ghostface mask. I think I've done about 4 masks so far. I've lost count. Done about 4 masks so far, and I'm still about halfway full. As long as when you do decide to pour out the latex from the mask, which we'll go through that whole process as well, once you pour the latex out of the mask, the best thing to do is kind of siphon through the latex, try to get all the clumps out, and then you can pour it back in this latex, and it'll work just as great. I love this consistency. It's kind of like a milkshake from Cookout in a way, if y'all have a Cookout around there. It's really great to work with. Just make sure that when you do pour this in your mold, you take it very slow, because you do not want to introduce air bubbles into the cast, because if you do, you're going to have air bubbles all in your final piece, and trust me, it don't look good. So this is the shroud and the eye mesh. Now mind you, I did pick these up from Hobby Lobby, but I'm sure you can pick them up at any fabric store. Just go with what you think's best. This is what I made the shroud out of. It's kind of like a legging material, but it's very soft, it's very stretchy, and it feels great on, also feels great to the touch, feels very high quality. Also, when you do have this in like a flashlight, direct sunlight, it's got a very faint glittery look to it, and I know the KNB mask, the original, did not have that glitter look like the robe did, but granted, I think it gives great texture to have the glitter look in this. Now it's not right out there, it's very faint, but I do think that it looks absolutely amazing on. Now this is what I made the eye mesh out of. As you can see, it's very, well, if I can, there we go, it's very see-through. I love that. I do not know what either one of these were named. Like I said, I basically felt it, looked at it, grabbed it, got them to cut it, went on my way. But like I said, it's going to be whatever you think's best. These are what I chose, and I think it absolutely came out amazing. Now, when it came to making the shroud, which I had a little bit of trouble with just because either I made it too big or I made it too small, once I got an even idea of how I wanted it, right in the middle of that big and small, once I got it real good even in the middle, I decided to make a template of one side, then flip that template over to make a template for the other side. Then I just ended up sewing it in the top and a little bit in the front, and the rest I just put on with E6000, which has worked amazing for this mask. Once it goes on, it's hard to get it off, so it has worked amazing. It doesn't feel fragile, it feels sturdy, it feels great, and I couldn't be happier. When it came to the eye mesh, I did end up using that E6000 again, and like I said, it's working absolutely amazing. But before shrouding the mask, I do recommend getting a piece of elastic to go on the mask itself. That way it has a better fit on you. You can't really just rely on the shroud because the mask is going to be moving all over the place. Once you put that elastic on the mask that goes around your head, it's going to fit a whole lot better. What I usually do is I'll take the long piece of elastic, I'll kind of measure out my head, give it a little bit of give on it, That way that can attach to the back side of the mask. Once that's done, it's going to fit you like a dream. Now, I'm not going to go through the painting process just yet. Y'all will see that in the video, because I realize now that I've been blabbering on for a little bit too long, and I know y'all want to see what y'all are here to see. So therefore, let's go through the whole process of making this mask. Now, mind you, it's not a full long video. I can't do that for some reason. I've tried, it don't work. I do need a professional camera. It might work a little bit better, but me with my work, I've got to be listening to something, and I can't listen to anything if I'm recording, which sucks. So if I can get a little bit more people in here and liking these videos, I will invest in me an actual camera, just so y'all can get better tutorials and better videos. So therefore, let's go ahead and let's get started on the KNB process. As you can see, I started out with a drawing, and then I began blocking the clay to kind of get the shape that I wanted before adding details. Then I'm using rubbing alcohol on this mask just to smooth out some of the details as I'm adding the clay. If it says anything, I thought I was done with the sculpt right here. And as you can see, I ended up adding more clay. Like I said, sculpting is an additive and a subtractive process. Also, I failed to tell you what kind of clay I was using for this piece. This is monster clay. It is an amazing clay if you're going to be molding stuff. It is great to work with. I got medium instead of hard or soft. That way it's a little bit more pliable to work with. All you have to do is throw it in the microwave to heat it up, and you're good to go. Now for the molding process. To mold this, I used this like plastic stuff that is used for sale signs and made a barrier with it. And I also taped up the ends just to make sure that there was no areas where any of that plaster could leak out. And right here, I'm mixing up the hydrocal now to get a good consistency to be able to pour. But like I said, I ended up pouring not enough. Now that the mold's done, as you can see, it's not completely level, but you can still make it work. Now you will see where air bubbles were introduced into the mold, which caused those craters in the face, but you can fix those. It's no worries. It's just a little bit of a back step. But as you can see right here, I'm fixing those. I fixed them with plaster and some air dry clay, and it worked out amazing. Now we are going to the casting latex process. Now, like I just said in the beginning of the video, make sure you pour it slow. That way you do not introduce any air bubbles, because the air bubbles that you saw in the plaster molding could be in this if you're not careful. I let that sit under the fan for about 2 hours, and then I poured out the remainder, which left a layer of latex in there that will eventually become our mask. I would say let this cure for about a day before you go to pulling out the actual mask. Now, before you go to pulling out this latex, make sure you use some baby powder and just coat the inside of it, because latex really likes to get stuck on itself, and the baby powder is just going to make sure that it doesn't. Don't mind that the Ghostface mask has a Santa beard right now, because that will be cut off, including the eyes and the little hole for the mouth. As you can see, this is the shroud that I cut out. It's 2 pieces that have been stitched right in the center. Also, I used E6000 in some spots. And here's the Plasti-Dip painting process. And when it came to the mouth, the nose, and the eyes, I just ended up using a paintbrush just so you could get those finer details. And this is me using my H40 mask stand to put the shroud on. alongside also using that E6000 to put the eye mesh in. But now, this is the final results.